Joshua Reinald was in his 70s and hospitalized when he heard his children talking about their inheritance behind his back. He was shocked at what he heard. What he did in response taught everyone in the hospital a valuable life lesson. For a long time, Joshua felt hopeless about his life, but he knew there was no way to start over, to redo things, or to ask for forgiveness from anyone he had hurt, whether he meant to or not. So he chose to live an eventful life without regret for the years that had passed. He had loved and been loved, although he experienced undeserved sorrows and hopes. There was also a lot of happiness in his life. Like most residents of his town, Joshua's parents were blue-collar workers. Thus, he did not live a life of luxury and, instead, had to fight hard to get what he wanted from life. He married early after meeting Nora completely by chance. She was a simple, bookish student who grew up in an intellectual family where both her parents were teachers and had dedicated their entire lives to passing on their knowledge. He took good care of his wife, who was often inattentive and totally immersed in writing her books, but she greatly appreciated his care and called him her guardian angel for decades. No one in the family was surprised when Nora's career took off. Her books were loved by readers and were being published in ever-increasing numbers. Soon the couple moved out of their modest apartment and bought a beautiful country home where Nora had the peace and quiet she needed to write. By this time, they already had children, two young boys named Dante and Sebastian, who grew up playing in the beautiful green fields where they lived. Unfortunately, after 50 long years of marital happiness, Nora fell ill. One spring morning, she passed away quietly in her sleep without any knowledge of how things would turn out for her husband and children. By then, Dante and Sebastian had already formed their own households with their respective wives and children. After the death of his wife, Joshua was left alone. He didn't know what to do with himself or where to put his energy now that he had lost his lifelong companion. At the age of 78, he knew that living alone would not be easy. A few days after Nora died, he felt a strange leg weakness and was admitted to the hospital for a medical examination. He was not afraid of death, but he dreamed of going peacefully in his sleep, just like his wife did. He did not want to die in a sterile hospital room surrounded by nurses. Dante and Sebastian went to visit their father and found him in good spirit. "Good morning, Father. How are you feeling this morning?" Sebastian asked as he entered the room. The old man just smiled, knowing that words were not needed to convey the happiness he felt at seeing his two sons. "Father, why don't we take you home? Wouldn't you be more comfortable there?" his son Dante asked. At that point, his doctor intervened and said that their dad needed constant care, that someone should be nearby in case of any emergencies. "That's not an option for the kids, doctor. They're already grown, with families of their own. A frail old man like me would only get in their way." Joshua joked. Deep inside, he hoped that his children would contradict him. He waited anxiously for a response, but only an awkward silence filled the room. The doctor excused himself, hoping to ease the situation. Dante and Sebastian were clearly uncomfortable with their father's words and claimed that they had their own lives and wouldn't be able to manage if he were living with them. However, they offered to hire a private nurse to live with him if he would accept that. Their father agreed and was silent for a few seconds. Then he asked if his sons could visit him more often, as he missed them both very much. They both agreed, and after staying just a few more minutes, they both left. After lying there for a while, Joshua decided to take a short walk outside to get some air and clear his head of these sad thoughts. He went out into the corridor and was surprised to see that the hospital was quieter and more deserted than usual. That's when he heard a child's muffled cry coming from one of the rooms. He gently opened the door and saw a pale young woman lying on a bed, connected to all sorts of hospital equipment. A little girl about 8 years old was sitting next to her, sobbing uncontrollably as she held the sick woman's hand. It was obvious that the young girl was trying to restrain herself, but she could not. In a calm and friendly manner, Joshua approached her and asked what had happened. Although she appeared to be quite shy, the little girl quickly answered through her tears. She said that her mother was dying and that she didn't know what to do. Joshua sat down next to her, offering words of comfort. In trying to console her, he asked her to tell him the story from the beginning. The little girl introduced herself, saying that her name was Ellen and that she and her mother had lived alone for as long as she could remember. Her mother, whose name was Kate, worked as a store clerk to support the two of them. In addition, she had taken a part-time job, which meant she was very tired every day and was clearly not coping with this difficult schedule. Ellen felt sorry for her hard-working mother and tried to please her in every way she could. She was good at school, and to help out at home, she learned to cook and sweep the floor. But one day, a tragic accident happened that would completely change everything for this small, modest family. Coming home after the last shift of the week, her exhausted mother crossed the street without seeing an approaching car. The vehicle hit her at full speed and Kate was rushed to the hospital. The doctors did everything in their power to care for her, but she fell into a coma. Although there were treatment options available, both an experimental treatment and a more invasive and dangerous surgery, both were very expensive and the family could not afford them. The waiting list for free surgery was long, which meant that Kate could be in a coma for months or even years while waiting. And each additional day in the hospital diminished her chances of a full recovery. Ellen felt hopeless. She was just a child and did not know how to deal with her mother's condition, while at the same time managing the bureaucratic steps that the situation required. Joshua consoled her as best he could and then slowly went back to his room, thinking about how unfair life could be to some people. He thought about how Kate was doing nothing but working hard in her life, and now her daughter, Ellen, might grow up without having a mother around. It didn't seem right. The next day, before her treatment began, Joshua stopped at the hospital room to check on Ellen and Kate and found that Kate's condition remained the same. However, on his way back to his room, he heard voices coming from inside, and when he realized whose voices they were and what they were saying, he was in shock. It was Dante and Sebastian. They were arguing rudely, as if they hated each other. Their father, who had never witnessed a single fight between them in his entire life, was quite surprised. He stopped at the door to listen to what was going on. At that moment, with much swearing and many hateful words spoke, he heard Dante say, "What makes you think the cottage should be left to you? I am the eldest son." Sebastian replied with harsh words that would echo in his father's head for the rest of his life. "You only have 2 sons, and I have 3. You can make do with the apartment and half of the money from Mom's old book sales. When the old man dies, we will see to who he leaves everything to. Rest assured that it clearly won't be long now, and you can be sure that if it doesn't go to me, I will sue you for every last penny." Joshua staggered away from the door, unable to bear the hatred emanating from his hospital room. He was horrified to think that his children were fighting among themselves over the inheritance of someone who was still alive. Suddenly, he remembered his children's behavior before he was admitted to the hospital and realized that they had never been especially affectionate or attentive. He even wondered if perhaps they had never really cared about him. After all, they rarely visited him, and when they did, it always coincided with the bookstore's payout date. The fact was that his late wife's books were still very much in demand. In that moment, Joshua realized how blind his paternal love had been all these years. He finally decided to open the door and go in. Dante was silent almost instantly. The anger and tension quickly disappeared from their faces as the brothers tried to conceal their argument with phony smiles. Joshua was stunned by the sudden and drastic change of mood. He immediately asked Sebastian to call the family lawyer and invite him to the hospital the next morning so he would finally make his will. The brothers were confused and tried to convince their father that he had many years yet to live. They told him it was too early to think about his will, but he interrupted their bogus speeches and asked them to let him rest. He said they should return with their lawyer the following day. The brothers exchanged glances, gave their father a hug, and left, silently closing the door behind them. Meanwhile, Joshua just shook his head in disbelief, imagining the tremendous discussion that would take place outside the hospital. At exactly 10 o'clock the next day, the lawyer walked briskly into the hospital with his briefcase and began to spread out the requested papers, while Dante and Sebastian waited patiently for the fateful decision. When the lawyer was ready to take notes, Joshua smiled and began to speak his will. He said that he would leave $5,000 to each of his children. In addition, he ordered that $150,000 be transferred immediately to a private clinic that would provide the treatment, surgery, and rehabilitation of a patient named Kate, who was currently in a room in the same hallway. His children could not believe their ears. When asked by the lawyer about the apartment and cottage, the old man ordered that both be sold, with the proceeds divided equally between his grandchildren. He wanted them to receive the money as soon as they came of age. Although the grandchildren had never visited him since they were born, he knew that they were just children and unaware of what was going on. Deep down, he hoped that they would grow up to be more sensitive than their parent. Joshua closed his will by saying that he was extremely disappointed in his children and that he never expected this from them. that because of their extreme greed, he had no choice but to do what he did. I hope this is a reality check, which, although unpleasant, will wake them up to real life, he said. Sebastian and Dante angrily shouted about how unfair this was, saying that they would annul his will on the grounds that he was not in his right mind. When Joshua asked a lawyer if he had the right to dispose of his property as he wished, the lawyer said that everything was legal and that if his children thought he was incapacitated, the hospital could easily verify his sanity with the help of authorized specialists. Dante and Sebastian left the room in anger, not even saying goodbye to their own father. Joshua just smiled sadly at the lawyer and said, "Please, you must get the money transferred to the clinic as soon as possible. A life and a family depend on it." He then went into the other room to meet with little girl Ellen and her mother. Ellen was reading a book aloud to her mother, Kate, who was still in a coma, looking very weak and getting worse every day. "Hello to you both. How are we today? In a few days, we will all go together to another clinic where Kate will receive the treatment she needs. I don't want you to worry, as my lawyer will arrange everything," Joshua said, looking at the two of them. With teary eyes, Ellen asked if this was true. When she heard the confirmation, she hugged the old man and then her mother. Joshua had not felt for a long time what it was like to be useful to someone, but now his soul was warmed by the thought that before he died, he would be able to do some good and save a family. Joshua stayed close to Kate and Ellen and remained happy for the last 6 years of his life. His children never visited him again or even called. Only his grandchildren came by in secret. He left this world exactly as he had hoped, lying in his bed sleeping. Ellen and her mother remember him with kindness and love and will do so for the rest of their lives. If you liked this story, please leave a like on the video. And this next story that is appearing on the screen now will probably move you too. Have a great day and see you in the next video.